that Global Governance Act included a biometric chip that will require you to have it in order to quote quote participate in society. So we already see the foundation of what's going on. And like you said, once they have control over the information, that will be the telltale sign that what is to come next. Right now, they don't have that, but they are close because they are planting the seed everywhere you look on misinformation and how dangerous misinformation is. And the translation of that is it's just information against their narrative. And they're going to put a stop to that. It's just a matter of time.
Well, and I think you understand probably better than most the critical component of intelligence and communication being the forerunner for anything that actually takes place much more viscerally after the fact. It requires a huge amount of infrastructure for that intelligence to be gathered so that, the psychological operations can have their most effective power. And those, I'm going to grab a book too. There's a guy I want to. I'm not sure if you have heard of Carl Teichereb. This is his book. This is I would just say, one of the best books I have ever read in regards to clearly identifying they, them, those, who, what, where, when, why of these non-elected rulers and their advance towards this, I would say he calls it the re-enchantment of man. The subtitle is The Temple of Man in the Age of Re-enchantment. And Carl did a lot of covert espionage in his own way. Just a friendly Canadian sneaking into the United Nations and the global summits. And he went and did a lot of just firsthand research so he could find out from themselves, what is it that they're trying to push and advance? What is it back in the 90s? What is it back in the 2000s? And he was in the meetings with these folks. He was somebody who put himself in these positions so that he could find out for himself, what is it that they're trying to do with the green agenda? What is it that they're really trying to do about environmental policies and using the environmental policies or these cultures of oneism, right? Oneism and humanism and these drives towards this mixing between what was prophesied by the prophets of Baal, like Helena Blavatsky, and these people of old that had been putting forth this re-enchantment of bringing in the unifying of the nations under what is a mixture between Gnosticism and New Age that we would call it today. But really it is the return to these old gods, these old religions that put forth these similar messages, which is why there's hundreds of billions and trillions of dollars being invested into capturing the minds and capturing the entertainment, capturing the imagination like Disney and Marvel to raise up in the minds of people these old gods, their narratives, their ways. He literally says in the scriptures, don't go learn the ways of these nations. Don't go learn about their gods. Don't go learn how they worship their gods. He's like, literally, don't even settle it in your heart to go find out how they worship their gods, because lest you be drawn astray into it. But so much of that narrative had to get set into place by destroying religion, by eradicating through scientific agnosticism and this hatred of God, that we would purge all forms of religion away from us, but then ultimately bring it back through this culturalized narrative of oneism, that we are all connected to the earth, that we have to be the ones to steward this earth. And you guys, obviously, the normal people can't handle that. So we need a world government to ensure that the human race and the earth has the ability to prosper and go on. He had a chapter in here. It's called The Cult of the New World Order, or The Cult of World Order. And he goes to The Hague. He goes to a lot of these different places personally, and he reads specifically their books, and he publishes a lot of it here so that you can have it for yourself. But this is one of those books that I would just encourage any of you that are looking for firsthand sourced reference material that's like very well documented and well articulated. Carl Teichereb does one of the best jobs of anybody that I've seen at actually being boots on the ground to bring forth that agenda and play it out throughout its time. Because ultimately these global powers, these aren't people that just started this randomly one day. This Anglo-American establishment, like you're describing what's being beta tested in London, that goal of that hierarchy over there has always been to reunite America and bring it back under its own colony, to restore the colonial position of America, so that is... Listen, as much as we think America is great and powerful, they got a lot more seats at the United Nations. They've got a lot more colonies that are under the crown. And because of that, if they can reunite and take the United States back under its dominion, they'll have the militant arm to be so much more effective at enforcing policies like you just described there, that we can enforce these policies and get the military power might from the Americas to enforce that all over the earth, to put the gun in people's faces, to silence them and to censor them. So that's where I say the Anglo-American, another book is Tragedy and Hope 101, one of the best books to try to see the articulation of that, over the last 150 years. How did they go about taking what we used to fight against very viscerally and make them our heroes and make them our allies? That, the British are here as our heroes and our allies, and we need to waver together. But ultimately, it's to bring us under that power of control so that that global governance gets seated together more cohesively.
Yeah. I mean, you can see the seeds being planted already. Look at what the Pope is doing. He's gathering all the religious leaders of every religion, bringing them all to one, and all paths lead to God with his global governance. And in 2022, that New Atlantic Charter Treaty yoked England and the United States together back, essentially playing out exactly what you just said. As the ball is rolling down that hill. Everything is literally playing out. It's just in a subtle way where most folks don't recognize it. But as you've mentioned already, the key indicator will be when they have a wrap around the information. That will be, for me, the red flag. Once they have control over data and information and what we are exposed to, then we know what is next. Because if they can't control the information, which they're going to, it's just a matter of time. If they can't control it, then it's not a winnable situation with them. So there's going to have to be something that propels us into that situation where they can, whether it is some type of disaster or who knows. But they have a plan, like you said, and they have been working on it for a long time. You can literally see it playing out little by little, and it's been in the works for a really long time. A really long time. And at the very tippy top, you have the Kingdom of Darkness, which is calling all the shots. Everybody's sold out. It's difficult to even determine who is really doing the work of the kingdom anymore when it comes to any type of government person, as the deception is so thick. They do such a good job at muddying the waters with information and misinformation, as they do that intentionally so that folks have a difficult time tracking what the reality of things are. It's interesting.
Well, it's a very effective strategy to just overwhelm people with constant changing information that's keeping them never able to come to an understanding, never able to actually sit down and process what it is they've taken in, never actually logically lay out okay, I've taken in a whole lot of information today. What am I doing with it? How am I analyzing it? How am I actually, am I going to do anything with this? Do I have any deductive reasoning that's going on in my head, or am I just perpetually moving on to the next thing? But they're creating that quick-paced mentality in so many of us, that operant conditioning to look over here and look over there and look over here and look over there, and never really seeing who the real players are. And it's just, to me, it's much more indicative of military operations and psychological warfare than anything I've seen, is to see that kind of play out, because that's the same way that was happening in Iraq. I mean, when the amount of just noise that was brought in to total dominance in order to do that, like the amount of human terrain that was collected before that, and the experts that were brought in, anthropologists in a lot of ways, and psychologists that were brought in to dominate that landscape. But this was years in the making. It wasn't something that just popped up overnight in 2003. There were operators that were building up and networking that out for years. I mean, this is something that's been patch quilted and repackaged over and over again since Guatemala, and the CIA found the efficacy of how to create ground branch and how to be able to disseminate out, basically create their civil wars whenever they wanted, and to build out sleeper cells so that they can activate those assets and then be able to turn on a civil war. And this is something that's been going on for so long, and that's why much of my life in that world that I saw was seeing sleeper cells being cultivated and created and then being planted in these positions, knowing that they're dormant, knowing that they don't even really know what they are, and they're just sitting there. They are literally waiting for the Black Awakening. They are waiting for the days where they are told to turn and devour their masters, and to really go back to serving the one that fed them from the beginning. And this is really how this house of cards has been built up, is that it's so infested with these tares, like it describes them in the scripture, these ones that are given over to violence. That is what that reaping of that sword of violence that's going to take place, where men will turn and devour each other and consume each other, because this is how the enemy operates, by splitting the soul. He shatters people's identity. He destroys in them and then demonizes them, so that they cannot have a foundation. Like it says in James, a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. And this is ultimately what so many of these individuals are, is they are split personalities. They don't know what the right hand is doing, but they are dormant and they are waiting. And not just the United States has these, Russia has these, Great Britain has these, China has these. They're all over the world. They've got their sleeper cells and they're waiting for their days. Mexico and cartels are all of these different operations that are now weaponizing people to this same level. And that's why you can see when you wonder how fast you can actually activate this system, I think it's something that can happen very, very quickly, to where you can have breakthrough technologies that seemingly pop up out of nowhere, that have been shelved for a long time, that are suddenly brought out of the closets as the saviors, and they can turn this entire thing and make it rapidly come upon us far faster than people realize. And so that's why I hold my hand very
Far
loosely.
faster.
I sit back and I wait, because I recognize that there is a restrainer that is operating, that is keeping this from coming down immediately. Because what I saw happen in that underworld was unhuman. It was unhuman.
Yeah.
And these people can become walk-ins for powers that are far beyond demons. They are far, far beyond anything that people conceive of when they see spiritual warfare on TV. These things are so intelligent. You are dealing with ancient intelligence. Like the immortals, they've not been sleeping. Just consider that for a second. If you didn't sleep for 1,000 years and were keenly observing human behavior and figuring out how to manipulate people, like that's the reality of what we're dealing with. It is a vampire class of people that are so intelligent that they're not people. They are fully possessed, fully dominated and ruled over by these ancient ones. And because of that, they have the ability to enact change with power and wealth and with influence and with a prestige that is beyond most people's comprehension. And I really believe it takes spiritual, supernatural discernment to be able to cut through that veil and to be able to confront the powers of darkness that are behind that, to ask the Father and intercede that he would forgive the sins that have empowered that kingdom, to be able to take out its battery bank. That is what's going to be required for him to help hold this off long enough that we can continue to advance the kingdom and preach the gospel to every creature until he comes.